Hi guys, this is gsn1.com and I'm here with the Sony Xperia M5, the Xperia M5 Dual version, the Dual SIM one. This is the follow-up to the Xperia M4 Aqua handset. It's a mid-range camera phone. It was announced in August and launched in September this year. The price tag is around $400 on the Asian market at least. Okay, so the design, let's get this out of the way, is very much like the one of the Sony Xperia Z3. This phone comes in gold, black or white, those are the color versions, and it measures 7.6 millimeters in thickness while also weighing 142.6 grams. It's a 5-inch phone, and comparing to the M4 Aqua, the predecessor, it's now 0.3 millimeters thicker and also about 7 grams heavier. I should also mention that this model is only 0.3 millimeters thicker than the Sony Xperia Z5. It keeps the omni-balance design, as you can see right here, with the trademark power button, the glass back, and the sides that look like metal while in fact they're plastic. Still, the frame is pretty solid, the phone is slim enough, and we got stainless steel corners. We used to have nylon corners, now we got stainless steel ones, probably for the sake of resilience. This is quite a long phone. Usually a 5-incher is not that long and you can easily reach all the areas of the screen with your thumb. Well, this time it's a longer phone, so it's a bit harder to reach everything. It's also slightly slippery because of the plasticky glossy edges and the glass back. It's a waterproof and dustproof phone with certifications of the IP65 and IP68 kind. It also can be kept under 1.5 meters of water for up to 30 minutes without a problem. Well, up front we can find the earpiece right here, the front camera, the sensors. There is an LED flash here somewhere, and I mean LED notification light, not flash, for the camera. And we also have this thing here that may look like a speaker. It's in fact a microphone, fake speaker so to say. And I have to mention that the bezels of the screen are quite big for the current year. Also, another thing to mention here is that the facade of the phone is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, so you leave your prints on it. At the back we can find another fingerprint magnet, don't know if you see it. We can find the main camera and its flash a bit further apart than expected usually, and it's a single flash here. At the top, audio jack and microphone. At the bottom, speaker and the micro USB port, while on the left side, be prepared to use the nails. We have a lid that's hard to remove if you don't have longer nails. Here we go. And this lid hides both the important slots. We got the dual SIM slot at the top and the micro SD one at the bottom, and you have to pull the tray out using your fingernails, which I cannot because they're not very long. Anyway, the idea would be to pull this metal tray, insert the SIMs, also the micro SD. Every generation of Sony Xperia phone gave me this problem, so I'm not surprised here. The key here would be to have long nails or maybe something to pry it out. Okay, on the right side we got the buttons, trademark power button, volume button and camera button, all of them with good feedback and comfy to use. This is overall a pretty okay design. If you like the Xperias, I should still mention that it's a slippery phone and a fingerprint magnet at the front and back. It's still a slim and solid frame handset. Now, as far as the hardware is concerned, we're getting a 5-inch screen here with a resolution of 1920 over 1080 pixels. It's an IPS LCD screen with a density of 441 ppi. The brain of the phone is an octa-core MediaTek MT6795 processor, which is basically the Helio X10. And just in case you're not familiar with its CPU, it's a 64-bit 2 GHz unit, and we're also getting EMG Rogue G6200 GPU, 3 GB of RAM, 16 GB of storage, and that micro SD card slot supports up to 200 GB extra. Up front, a 13 megapixel shooter for selfies. At the back, 21.5 megapixel camera. And as far as the connectivity goes, we got LTE category 4, NFC, GPS, Bluetooth 4.1, DLNA, GLONASS, micro USB 2.0, and dual nano SIM slots, as well as Wi-Fi, ABGN. The sensors included here are the pretty usual accelerometer, proximity sensor and compass. We have reached the battery area where we find a 2600 mAh unit, and on paper we should be getting here 11 hours and 49 minutes of talk time, or 671 hours of standby, or 62 hours of music, or maybe 8 hours and a half of video playback. Sony also promises 2 days of mixed usage. Let's see what happened in our test. Okay, so we did a test that involves HD video playback in a loop with Wi-Fi on and brightness at 200 lux. We achieved 6 hours and 34 minutes, which is not very impressive. Still, we beat the HTC One M9 with 6 hours and 9 minutes, the Huawei P8 Lite with its 5 hours and 25 minutes, and the All-View X2 Extreme with its 6 hours and 11 minutes. I should also mention that we scored below the Amazon Fire Phone that scored 7 hours and 10 minutes, and also below the Sony Xperia E4, which is an entry-level handset that scored 7 hours and 18 minutes. And another mention, we scored below the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser, another sort of mid-range camera phone that scored 11 hours, so almost double our duration, but not quite. We also did a PC Mark test, which simulates continuous usage of this device, and the continuous usage with brightness at 200 lux, 5 hours and 48 minutes, which I would call reasonable. We beat the Asus Zenfone 2 that had 5 hours and 45 minutes, Huawei P8 5 hours and 31 minutes, and HTC Desire 820 5 hours and 25 minutes. We scored below the Sony Xperia E4 with its 5 hours and 52 minutes, and also below the LG AKA with its 6 hours and 22 minutes, plus the Huawei Mate S with its 6 hours and 26 minutes. Another phone that beat us, Galaxy A5, 6 hours and 51 minutes. Other things we're mentioning, of course, the charging. It takes quite a bit to charge this phone, 3 hours and 4 minutes, quite long for a 5-inch handset. Still, we're charging faster than the iPhone 6 Plus that needs 3 hours and 16 minutes to charge, Zenfone 2 Laser 3 hours and 24 minutes, or the Xperia Z3 that required 3 hours and a half. Obviously, there's a ton of models out there that charge faster, like the Desire 820, 2 hours and 57 minutes, Huawei P8, 2 hours and 47 minutes, or the Huawei P8 Lite, 2 hours and 41 minutes. Overall, the battery is not very impressive even for a mid-ranger. Of course, you can also do a bit of power management, so let's go to the settings area, which is not that one. And here you can find the option called power management, and here you see an estimation of your usage, and then the power saving modes per se. We got the famous stamina mode that you can activate right here and select its activation at a certain percentage. Also, there's extended standby that will disable the mobile data and Wi-Fi when the screen is off. You can allow certain apps to be active in standby, and an option called extended usage is also here that restricts device performance to increase battery time, plus stamina clock that saves power if the device is frequently used to check time, which people do quite a lot these days. We got ultra stamina mode, which is a rather intensive option because it only lets you use the basic features like phone and messaging. Those are the basic features. It turns to a more minimalistic user interface and expands the battery life quite a bit. Low battery mode is also here. It's more like a custom mode, allowing you to tweak stuff like auto sync, mobile data, GPS, check them, and also check a certain battery percentage. Finally, we can queue background data in order to save even more battery. We got app power consumption, unused apps and things like that if need be. So overall, I would have to say that the battery is not very impressive for a mid-ranger. And now it's time to talk about the speaker right here and about the acoustics. First of all, you'll notice that this music player is not called Walkman, it's just called Music. And you'll also see that it lacks the equalizer, for example, but that's placed in the settings now. We got a gray user interface, it's not transparent anymore, and it's time to actually listen to some tunes here. First, here we go. Okay, now the conclusions. I have to say that the volume is quite high. This is a loud device with a clear and crisp sound. It can cover a conversation in a small room, the bass is very good, and the guitar is surprisingly good for a mid-ranger. I wonder where all the cool options went, where they're not in this player here, so that's interesting. Now as far as the headphone goes, they're a bit standard, so to say. There aren't any type of earbuds. They're pretty regular, design-wise, made of plastic, with a pretty big remote that doesn't have any fancy buttons. Let's actually connect this wire that can tangle. It's not a tangle-free wire, like some companies are using. I don't like the space that's left here when the jack and the special audio port meet. There is a small space left. Anyway, I don't like that. So going back to the headphones, have a tangling wire, big remote, they feel cheap, they can fall from your ear, they don't stick inside enough. However, they have a very good bass, they're pretty loud and clear, but I've heard louder before. Since you have the headphones, you got to use FM radio, which is right here with a cute interface, but not very fast when it comes to scanning for stations. Quite slow actually, but with a nice visualizer available among its options and track ID that will recognize the songs, even regional ones, so to say. Okay, enough about the headphones. Not very impressive in design, but reasonably good when it comes to the actual acoustics. As usual in our reviews, we have a decibel meter and we use it to test the quality of the speaker. And the test shows something like 85.4 decibels at the back of the phone and 85.6 decibels at the front of the phone, which is quite good. We beat the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus that scored 85.5 decibels. We beat the Galaxy Note 5, 84.9 decibels, and the iPhone 6 Plus with 83.8 decibels, so that's impressive. Still, there are other phones out there that scored more than us. We got the OnePlus One with its 90 decibels, Galaxy Note 4 89.5 decibels, and the Asus Zenfone 2 with its 87.6 decibels. A thing I noticed here is that the speaker is easy to cover when you're holding the phone in landscape, playing a game or watching a video. As you can see, it's very easy to cover with your finger. And in the settings area, you'll find those cool options I was regretting from the player. Should be in the sound and notification department. Audio settings, we got Clear Audio Plus. We simply optimize everything by pressing it. We got sound effects with an equalizer that involves these custom channels, options related to bass boost, treble boost, or simply musical genres. Clear bass is also here. And we got surround sound for your headphones, club, concert hall and all that. And dynamic normalizer, which is a feature that we knew from before. Overall, a very impressive set of acoustics here. There is nothing to object about, so I'm happy with the speaker and even the headphones despite of not looking so great. Now, if you're wondering about the display, I said it before, 5-inch Full HD IPS LCD, and there is a video app here, simply called Video, that has a bunch of sub-settings related to subtitles, fonts, video details, media server and all that. And now it's time to actually enjoy the experience. Okay, so no special options here. We got share, audio settings, display settings. The same options from the music experience are available in the video one, and display settings, but that's another talk to discuss later. Okay, so the actual experience goes something like this. Crisp and vivid, colors are realistic, they're not oversaturated. Sunlight behavior is okay, so contrast is good. We got wide viewing angles and a pretty good frame rate. Okay, now let's go back and see what type of pixels we're dealing with here. So this is the screen under the microscope, and as you can see, we're dealing here with RGB striped pixels. And as far as the brightness goes, we have a lux meter that showed us 430 lux units, which is good. We beat the OnePlus One that scored 404 lux, HTC One M9 362 lux, and the Galaxy A5 with its 370 lux. Still, we're scored below some other phones, other famous phones. HTC One M8, it beat us 463 lux, Huawei Mate S 455 lux, while the LG G4 barely beat us 432 lux. There's also a bit of a problem here. If you look at the screen on a black background, you can spot the light bleeding which is shown in this photograph here. It's not a problem that affects the experience, it remains a good screen, but it's important to remember if you really want perfection. This is an okay display, more than that, it's a good display with a bunch of settings to go. We got image enhancement here that can be set to off, mobile Bravia Engine 2 for enhanced photos and videos, and super vivid mode if you want to have your pictures really pop out of the screen. Glove mode if you're wearing gloves in the winter, brightness level, white balance with sliders for your RGB setup, adaptive brightness that can optimize the brightness level for the available light, screen rotation, smart backlight control which detects if you're holding the phone, and font size finally. So those are the options to play with, and remember, it's a good screen but it suffers from a bit of light bleeding around its edges. Now let's talk about the cameras. This has got to be the phone with the biggest front camera I've ever tested. It's a 13 megapixel front camera, which is very impressive. At the back, 21.5 shooter with exmor RS sensor and hybrid autofocus. It also has 5x clear image zoom, 4K video capture, HDR video, steady shot stabilization, and once again uses exmor RS technology. The front camera is a 13 megapixel one. It can do full HD video, and the hybrid autofocus thing is a premiere on this phone as far as I know. It allows the handset to autofocus in about 250 milliseconds and basically combines contrast autofocus and phase detection autofocus. That 5x clear image zoom basically allows you to zoom 5x without losing image quality. I'm surprised you only have a single flash here and it's so spaced from the camera. You can activate the camera by pressing the physical button, not very fast as you can see, and the app doesn't open fast even if you open it up from the virtual shortcut. It's basically the same user interface and the same options we got on the Xperia Z3 plus or minus some other ones. First thing I noticed is that the touch zoom is very slow if you do it like this. However, if you're using the volume buttons, it's faster. Also notice the 5x clear image thing. It remains quite clear when you zoom in even 5 times, so that thing was actually real. Okay, now let's see the capture modes. Okay, we got superior auto, which pretty much speaks for itself. It detects the situation you're in and adapts it. It offers a night mode option and other things like that. In this area we got the basic options. It's just so a bit of a bug. So in this area we got aspect ratio, self timer, smile shutter, preview, burst with long press, and several options like steady shot and microphone. So going back here, we got manual. That's the real deal if you like to tweak your experience. We got scenes. There's 15 scenes here for snow, gourmet, pet, sports, documents, and whatever you like. Then we got white balance and exposure, flash options like auto, field flash, red eye reduction, off, and flashlight, and finally the bulk of the options. We got resolution that can be 21 megapixels, which is 5312 over 3984 in 4:3, or 60 megapixels in 16:9, or decreasing to lower values. We also have a self timer, smile shutter, focus mode, single autofocus, phase detection, touch focus and object tracking, HDR, ISO going up to 3200, metering, center spot or average, image stabilizer and face recognition. Then we got the functions related to the actual capture. Okay, other things to mention here is that you can also tweak the video experience in the same section. Once again, scenes, white balance, exposure, flash options, and the video resolution can be full HD 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, HD or MMS, self timer, smile shutter, focus mode again, phase detect, object tracking, HDR video is available, metering again, steady shot, off or on, and several other options. So we're pretty much done with the manual mode, and let's go further. Then we got style portrait, which is a kind of a funky option. As you can see, it's related to selfies. It allows you to apply stuff on yourself like softer skin, daily option, red lips, and you can also apply a suntan, mystery. Mystery just made my eye blue. I don't know if you can see it, but my eyes are now blue. Then we got sunshine, bubbles, movie, paint, and that's about it. Basically you can play with your face, having variety of effects. There are also some creepy ones, and for example this one here allows you to have in your iris, in the iris of your eye, a heart. So right now I have hearts in the iris of my eye, or maybe these dots or lenses or things like that. You can also change the level of your option. So creepy option, funny option, funky option called style portrait. Augmented reality mask allows you to add a mask on your face. So I can add this face, this one like looks like Real Madrid's Benzema, and this one here, also pets. Works fine, it's a gimmick, doesn't change anything in your life, makes it funnier. Face in picture, it allows you to put your face in photos and videos using the front and main camera. Sound photo, multi-camera, recording the same scene from multiple angles on a single screen. 4K video, time shift, which is high frame rate video with slow motion effects. Augmented reality, creative effect, and sweep panorama that are basically known from older devices. I'm going to go to Superior Auto right now and revert to the front camera to see how the options are different here. First things first, aspect ratio and all that available here, but let's go to manual mode to see what the selfie camera really holds. So this time we're getting the self timer, resolution, as you can see 13 megapixels or 9 megapixels, 4 to 3, 60 to 9, HDR for the front camera, image stabilizer, HDR video for the front camera, also impressive, Full HD video for the front camera, and a bunch of other options. Time to go back here, go to Superior Auto and talk about some things here. So I have to say that in spite of promising that 250 millisecond focus, it's not exactly that fast. It may take a bit more than 250 milliseconds, so that's probably in ideal conditions, and picture taking is actually very long. So it takes longer than a flagship handset, for example. That's why it's still a mid-range phone in the end, but the results are very good looking, as you can see. Excellent level of detail, very pragmatic colors and capture, but those are ideal conditions. So let's go to the gallery and see how the camera did in normal daylight. Okay, so I have to say that these shots were taken on a cloudy day in October, so let's start with those taken inside first. So inside shot, reasonably clear but also a bit yellowish. Another inside shot, and another one could be just a bit clearer. Okay, now we're at the outside and the flowers look pretty crisp, but to be honest, I've seen much crisper than this. The level of detail is pretty much okay in all the shots. Nice focusing here with a clearer close-up subject and a blur background, as you can see. Okay, the landscape shot looks quite nice here. We got realistic colors, and when zooming in, the details remain pretty fine, as you can see here. And I don't need to zoom in to see this kid over here. You can see the zoomed in picture right here. So the kid here on the bell, and the kid again zoomed in and looking okay in details. Some other shots, cloudy day indeed, but the details remain reasonable. However, every once in a while we had a washed out picture like this one here, and this strange layer of white at the top of the image repeated itself at least 10 or 20 times, so it's not a constant camera. Once you feel happy with a picture, instantly it appears that there is another picture to spoil the fun for you with this white area above. However, most of the pictures have a nice texture and a nice set of colors, exposure, white balance. Some more shots here, good wall texture in close-up, nice focusing, and more of that problem I mentioned before. The colors are good, the green is very crude, so to say. Some more playing with the focus, so focusing on the close-up and blurring the background, and focusing on the background and blurring the foreground. Texture of the tree, close-up of a leaf with details highlighted, and another leaf. This one is a more artistic shot, you can really go in depth and enjoy the image of fall. And another white problem, once again that's the keyword here, the camera is not constant with its quality. Good colors yet again. This time we were in the shade, and that didn't affect the experience too much. Actually, I prefer the shade and the lower light areas to the ones with a bit of sun, because that seems to pose problems to the camera. Of course, close-ups remain its strongest suit, as you can see right here. Focusing was never a problem, and some more indoor shots, and then we changed town and we changed the day. This was a bit of a sunnier day, and you can see here that the washing out happens again. Most of the shots were taken in auto mode, but sometimes we switched it up. We switched to HDR or to the manual mode and increased or decreased the resolution and tried out various modes. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but most of the times I was let down by those random washed out shots. Good colors yet again. That's the thing to remember, the colors look good, and once you're in a shady area you'll really be happy with the results. Several attempts at selfies resulted in a strangely white background. However, that may have been the fault of a fingerprint or some dirt on the lens, because once I cleaned it, the selfies look better. And now the unavoidable close-ups of food and drinks, plus we played with those cute face ape effects. Okay, so I set close-ups of food, looking fine. Of course, there is a gourmet option in the menu, which makes them look even finer if you're into this type of picture taking. Okay, as I said before, once I cleaned up the lens, the selfies started looking a bit better. And in spite of that, I don't feel that the texture of the skin is as natural as I've seen on other handsets. For example, the Galaxy S6 with its 5 megapixel front camera takes better selfies than this 30 megapixel shooter, and I'm very sure about that. We have also taken nighttime shots. We let the phone on auto mode most of the times, and I have to say they're a bit yellowish, that's for sure, and a bit blurry. However, some of them, like this one taken in total darkness, really pulled out the shot into the light a bit more than expected. The flash is good, and in the conditions of a concert where the cameras are really put to the test, the camera actually handled the experience pretty well. It tries to light up everything. That's the key of the camera. When it finds itself in the dark, it really tries to light up everything, and when the darkness is really deep, that's where the camera really shines. So overall it performs better in the shade, in the darkness, and in stressful situations like concerts. You can even zoom into the nighttime shots and you'll be happy with the results. As you can see here, not much blur for a picture taken at night during a concert, so at least that's good. However, in spite of the praise I'm giving to this phone for its nighttime capture, if you go back and look at the Nexus 6 for example, its nighttime capture was better, mostly because of its excellent colors during the nighttime. Overall, I felt that this model has about the same performance as the Sony Xperia Z3 for example, but those washed out frames were a bit of a problem for me, and a little less clarity than the Xperia Z3, that's for sure. Also, I felt that the promises that Sony made here, which are 5x clear zoom and hybrid autofocus, were not exactly met. The autofocus wasn't as fast as they promised, and the 5x clear zoom is not exactly there. Overall, I'm not very impressed, I'm only marginally impressed by the concert capture, and I feel that this camera is above the HTC One M8, below the HTC One M9, and I would appreciate it more if it were constant, so maybe with a software update in the future it will be. The selfie is below the one of the Galaxy S6. This is a 30 megapixel shooter, but it behaves less impressive than a 5 megapixel shooter. So only the night capture impressed me, and maybe the quantity of effects and the close-ups. Okay, time to check out the videos. So this device is able to film in Full HD, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, HDR video or 4K. We start with the video number 1, which is this one, Full HD, MP4, 30 frames per second, 70 mega per second bitrate, and here we go. Bit of a lag here. Okay, so a bit whitish, a bit shaky, and strangely a bit burnt, and the quality of the image decreases greatly when zooming in. The colors look pretty nice though. So that was video number 1. Let's go to video number 2. It should be here somewhere. This one records a very serious quality drop when you zoom in. It's really getting grainy and pixelated. Once again a bit too white in the upper area of the screen, like I commented in the pictures. And once again shaky, so problems with stabilization. But the colors are pretty good. Okay, time to change cities and go to another place where we tried out the 4K video capture, which looks great, obviously. So let's start from the beginning. Here we go. 57 megapixel bitrate, very crisp, excellent colors, excellent lighting, excellent frame rate, good exposure change, nice clarity, and even the stabilization was better. Then after this brief period of praise, we go back to Full HD, just to be let down again. This one actually feels like a 480p video for some reason. It has exposure problems, it's very shaky, and things look really bad here, and basically pixelated for some reason. Then we took a 60 frames per second video, which looks pretty nice, cinematic, excellent colors. And there are some exposure problems later in the vid. An exaggerated change of exposure in my view. The cinematic image remains, the videos are less shaky than the ones before, and we end with the nighttime capture during a concert. And let's see what we got here. Let's find some of the good ones, maybe turn the volume down, because the camera could not handle the bass of the songs very well. And also for some reason the image seems to tremble. Maybe the bass was so strong that it made everything vibrate. I would say that the capture is okay, aside from the trembling thing, and the bass that's too much for this microphone. This is certainly no HTC One M7, that one used Nokia's microphone technology from what I know. And my first thought was that the nighttime capture of this phone is good enough to fight the one of the LG G4, but not when it comes to the microphone. We even zoomed in at some point, and the quality was kept quite nice, and I mean image quality, not sound quality. So I will say what I said before in the phone section. The phone seems to prefer darkness, shade, and when it meets with the sun or a lighter area, it creates a white halo at the top of the picture. That feels like something to be solved with an update, maybe in the future, and I would go as far as to say that the video capture during the day on this handset is below the one of the Samsung Galaxy A5, and also the recently tested Asus Zenfone 2 laser that if you look it up, it filmed really well. Overall, the attribute for the Xperia M5 is a lesser Xperia Z3, and it gets a bit warm after using the camera for a long while. Now if you want to do a bit of photo editing, you can select a picture, press this button here, and you'll see several options like photo editor, photos or sketch. This is the standard one with filters, frames, crop, straighten, rotate, vignette, exposure and such things, and some options associated to faces, and that's about all you can tweak here. Now as far as the performance goes, we're really switching it up, changing folders. Speaking of folders, you also get a sort of summary of your photos and clips, but more about that later on. And here we go, should be able to find temperature here somewhere. After playing the game Riptide GP2 for 15 minutes, we reached 38.7 degrees Celsius, which means the phone does not overheat, and that's always good news. Now as far as the browser goes, there is no stock browser here, there is Chrome. So let's load up gsmdom.com. As you can see, it's not a very fast browser. Could load the website faster, got fluid scrolling, and the virtual keyboard is quite comfy. I have to say the keys are well spaced, and luckily there's also swipe to help you. Okay, we're done with that. Keep in mind the browser was not very fast, which will also be felt in the benchmarks. Now in the phone section, we got a material design dialer, as you can see, and quite a few options here. Call settings, increasing ringtone, equalizer, normal, bright or smooth, speaker voice enhancement, and microphone noise suppression. I have to mention that the calls were loud and clear, and we had excellent noise cancelling, one of the best actually, and that option really works. Now it's time for the benchmarks, which means I'm going to have to go to the screenshots. I have decided to compare the Xperia M5 with the AllView X2 Extreme. They share the same processor, the Helio X10, and the same quantity of RAM, 3GB. And I also compare them to the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser, which has 2GB of RAM and a Snapdragon 615 processor. And finally to the Huawei Honor 6 with a Kirin 920 and 3GB of RAM. Now let's see the results. Okay, so in quadrant, the Xperia M5 scored 13,907 points. It was below the AllView X2 Extreme that had 31,000 points, below the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser with its 23,000 points, and above the Huawei Honor 6 that had 10,987 points. Next up, it's Antutu with a score of 33,963. The AllView X2 Extreme scored 50,000 points, the Zenfone 2 Laser had 36,000 points, and the Huawei Honor 6 41,000 points, so basically they all beat us. There's also Nena Mark II here that registered 60.2 frames per second, beating all the rivals. The AllView X2 Extreme had 59.5 frames per second, Zenfone 2 Laser 58.6, and the Huawei Honor 6 59.2. Velamo is in the mix as well with a low score. I said before that the browser will get felt in this benchmark, so 1816, surpassed by the AllView phone by about 600 points, surpassed by the Asus phone by about 200 points, and beaten by the Huawei phone by about 1000 points. 3D Mark did not impress either, and we have a score of 9,356 in the iStorm Unlimited test, which is almost double by the AllView X2 Extreme, 16,755. However, we beat the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser with its 8,684 points, but we got beaten by the Huawei Honor 6 with its 13,646 points. Geekbench 3 is also here, and here we scored 704 in the single core test and 1930 in the multi-core test, and the AllView X2 Extreme had 911 over 4630, while the Zenfone 2 Laser had 647 over 2605. Finally, Huawei Honor 6 857 over 3021. GFX is also registered here with a score of 16 frames per second in the first test and 17 frames per second in the second attempt. So basically 17 frames per second here. The AllView X2 Extreme 27 frames per second, the Zenfone 2 Laser 14 frames per second, and the Huawei phone 16 frames per second. There's also the obvious speed test via Wi-Fi. Here 25 megapixel download, 23 in upload, while the X2 Extreme had 15 and 20, the Asus phone 22 and 22, and the Huawei phone 21 and 24. The browser gets tested again, and it doesn't impress again. 1159 in browser mark, while the AllView phone had 1483, the Zenfone 2 Laser 1199, and the Huawei Honor 6 716, so at least we beat that model. In SunSpider, the lower the better, and had a high score, 1436 here, while the X2 Extreme had 1089, the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser 1542, and the Huawei Honor 6 782, winning this battle. And finally, we got here the Basemark X test with a result of 11,382, while the AllView X2 Extreme had 17,506, the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser 10,471. So overall the conclusion is that compared to the AllView X2 Extreme that shares the same quantity of RAM and the same processor, however it has a Quad HD screen, well, compared to that one we only win 2 out of 11 battles. Compared to the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser we win 6 out of 11 battles, and compared to the Huawei Honor 6, 6 out of 11 battles, so not very impressive. I would like to say that the interface is free of lag, but you saw a hint of lag before, and every once in a while, especially when background stuff is happening, you'll meet with lag on this handset because it has very much to process, especially image wise. Okay, so it has lag sometimes, but the 3D games run fine. I'm pretty sure you can run the latest Asphalt on it without a problem, maybe some FIFA games, and Real Racing 3 should be able to run on the Helio X10 without a problem. So a 3D game with 3D graphics, nice lighting effects, excellent water texture here. And let's see how the speed sensation is rendered. Looks fine, but then again this game also runs on the Nokia X, one of the lowest spec Android phones over the past years. And amazingly, the game did lag on some Huawei phones. Anyway, you can see that here it doesn't lag. So we proceed further to the OS and UI section of the review. So let's see what we're dealing with here. The Xperia M5, the Xperia M5 Dual in this case, runs Android 5.0 Lollipop with the latest Sony UI on top, although I have a feeling that the Xperia Z5 has a newer version of the Xperia UI. What defines this user experience is a glossy and shiny approach with colorful icons but also flat. Basically, it's transplant from the PlayStation experience combined with material design and a flat approach. So if you use the PlayStation, you'll feel right at home here, and if you use other Sony products, that applies too. If you keep the screen pressed, you'll be able to see some of the widgets available here, and all of them are good looking. They're more 3D than what other handset makers are offering, and they're even better looking than the ones from Samsung, for example. You can also view wallpapers and themes that you can apply to your screens, and even a store for new themes, some even related to motion pictures. If you want multitasking, that's done right here with a carousel. You close the apps like this, you can close them all with this button, and these little windows here are actually customizable. They're called small apps, and they're floating widgets that trigger extra apps on the screen at the same time, and they can be used simultaneously with other activities. So you have a mini version of the browser, you have the calculator, you can keep doing stuff and opening apps while these floating windows will trigger an extra level of multitasking. Now, as far as the drop-down area goes, notifications are available here. We got the stock Lollipop quick settings and brightness slider, and then we go into the settings. Nothing fancy and special here. Connectivity settings, dual SIM settings, Xperia connectivity with throw settings, screen mirroring, USB connectivity and all that. There is the more section with VPN and Android Beam, personalization, home with simple home and Xperia home, sound notification, storage, power management, users, tap and pay, security with screen lock, encryption, protection by my Xperia, so if you lose your phone you can find it, and more screen peering and things like that. Okay, so that's the setup part of the review. I would like to restate the fact that the UI feels clean and glossy, and now it's time to analyze the pre-installed apps list. Once again, I have to mention that this phone has quite a few apps installed, so we can say it suffers from bloatware, so let's take them one by one. We got Chrome, Play Store, Messaging, Phone, Music, Album and Video. These three are the stock Xperia apps. They have some things in common, like this area here with multiple sources for your media. An album is your gallery app that can show not only content but also favorites, videos, places, camera effects, faces, as I said before, home network and settings, and it integrates Facebook, Picasa and Flickr, which is a nice thing. It can also create those summed up things I mentioned before, and camera effects is here. You can see 4K video. Anyway, you get the idea. A pretty nice gallery app, so no complaints there. Video, PSN, PlayStation, what's new, camera, Facebook, news from social life. It wants to be a sort of flipboard, but not quite. Okay, and then we got YouTube, email, calendar, contact settings. We have calculator, backup, downloads, maps, track ID, smart connect, support, Gmail, Google, voice search, hangouts, party share, Spotify, AVG protection, office suite, movie creator, which is what I mentioned before. It's available with the gallery, and it creates a story from a certain day of shots. Takes all the pictures, some videos, adds the background music, and it sums up your day. And that can be done straight from the gallery. Okay, and then we got Sketch, Play, Memories Mobile, Xperia Launch, TV Side View, Photos, File Commander, Audio Recorder, Drive, FM Radio, AR effect, and that's about it. Those are all the apps, so we have a bit of bloatware available here. It's the end of the review. This is the Sony Xperia M5, the dual version, and here are the pros and cons. First of all, the pros, it's obviously a handset with a pretty good looking design, especially if you're a fan of glass combined with, let's say, wannabe metal and stainless steel corners. We got great acoustics, nobody can complain about the speaker, and the headphones are reasonably good. The screen is pretty bright and has nice colors. We got, I would have to say that the pictures taken in low light conditions and the videos are quite good, so no objections there. And the 4K capture also looked flawless in my book. The interface is clean and has some very nice widgets. We like the many camera options, and in the end it's a waterproof phone, so that's also worth mentioning. The cons, well, that's a bigger list, longer list. It's quite expensive for what it offers. You'll find out some other handsets that cost the same and offer much more, so expensive. The battery is not very impressive compared to what we've seen lately from other companies, like, I don't know, let's say Huawei maybe, or even Asus. We got that light bleeding thing on a black background that you've seen before. The hybrid autofocus and 5x clear zoom didn't exactly impress me or deliver what they promised. We had quite a few pictures that were washed out. You saw that earlier, and of course you see that in the full gallery. And the microphone cannot face a powerful bass in a concert. There's a bit of lag, and this lead is hard to remove, and the trays for the seams are also hard to remove. And finally, bloatware available here. So about 9 or 10 cons and about 7 pros, so the cons outweigh the pros. The phone gets an 8.7 out of 10. That's the grade for the design, an 8.3 for hardware, and a 9.3 for OS and UI. The final grade is 8.76 out of 10 for the Xperia M5, and I went back, looked at the Xperia Z2, and guess what? It costs about the same as this phone, which is not a right pricing, because the Xperia Z2 is superior to this phone, at least camera wise, which may come as a shock to you. That's why we do a bit of a drop of the grade, so from 8.76 we drop it to 8.5 because of the price. We had to penalize it, the price being so high. Basically, this is a lesser Xperia Z3 if you want, and in some aspects a lesser Xperia Z2. The selling points are not exactly very clear here. It's not the highest performing device, it doesn't have the best camera on the market, it doesn't even have the best camera of all mid-rangers. It's just a good camera with some drawbacks. The performance is just okay, not mind-blowing, and there's bloatware. The design remains okay for Sony Xperia fans, and the battery could be better. What's the selling point? Not exactly clear. Keep in mind, the Galaxy S5 is priced as little as with $100 less than this phone, which was a very serious argument to give it an 8.5 out of 10. And the Galaxy S5 has a much better camera than this model, and I stand by that statement. So 8.5 out of 10 for the Xperia M5 from gsndon.com. Bye bye.